I'm here with Nicole McKee, who is ACT MP and third on the party's list. Kia ora, Nicole, and thanks for joining me.
Tēnā koe, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
No, it's good to see you. First question is, why are you down here in Hawke's Bay?
Yeah, well, for me, it's actually up here in
Yeah,
the
fair
Hawke's
enough,
Bay,
yeah.
even though I came down from Auckland after our excellent campaign launch yesterday.
Yeah.
But we've come here because we want to spread the word about some of the policies that we have that will give New Zealand a chance to have real change in 26 days' time. 14th of October is going to be a big day for a lot of New Zealanders, and the way for us to get our messages and our policies out there is to travel the country. We love coming here to the Hawke's Bay. We always have a good uptake here, and we keep coming back because many people want to hear from us. So that's why we're here today, and unfortunately David Seymour couldn't make it because the wind was a little bit too rough for the planes to be able to land here in the Hawke's Bay today.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you've got support here. Have you seen that support grow in that? And is Hawke's Bay one of your sort of target areas that you're focusing on?
It is. The Hawke's Bay and the Wairarapa, we're actually seeing quite a big uptake of people being inquisitive about what our policies are, what they may mean, and wanting to come and hear from us. So this is why we keep coming back here. Both David and I were here just a few weeks ago. Yeah. We had over 200 people see us in Napier, and on the same evening over 200 in Hastings as well. So we want to come back and be able to reach out to those people that couldn't make those meetings so we can spread some of the word about our policies for real change.
Yeah. Now, your sort of strategy seems to be a party vote strategy, even though yes, you're fielding candidates in most of the regions, and you've got two. You've got Pavel Milewski in Napier, and you've got Rob Douglas in Tuki. Is that still the plan, or are you keen on one of them even winning the seat?
Look, we are absolutely after the party vote. The two electorate seats that we're running for or campaigning in at the moment is the Epsom seat for David Seymour, and we're fairly confident that Brooke Van Velden's going to take the Tamaki seat with electorate votes for her as well. But for the rest of the country, in order to get that real change, it's the party vote that we need that will really make the difference. So we're asking people out there to consider loaning us their party vote this October the 14th so that we can implement change, and to give their electorate vote to the National Party so that together we can hopefully form a coalition that does implement change for New Zealanders.
Interesting you talk about the Tamaki electorate, because that has always been a very strong National Party electorate. Do you feel that the country as a whole is moving more from the left to the right? And if so, why?
Well, the country itself is telling the pollsters that they're not happy with the direction that the country is moving in. And that is getting more and more as every time they do a poll, more and more people are saying, hey, we're actually struggling with the cost of living. Crime is getting out of control, and the co-governance issues, well, they haven't even been discussed with us. Yeah. And they're upset about that. This means that they're looking for alternatives, and that's why they're branching out and looking at ACT. Also, the reason why our vote is going up within the polls. But really, we're not concentrating on what's happening there. We're concentrating on getting our message out and how we can have good policies that unite New Zealanders behind good ideas.
Now, you mentioned your campaign launch. What was the main thing to come out of that in terms of your way forward?
Well, again, speaking about our policies on those three main areas, crime, co-governance and cost of living, how we can help alleviate some of those concerns for people, but also introducing the 20 top candidates, those that could be in Parliament representing New Zealanders as new members of Parliament. And of course, none of them are politicians that have been in politics for life. They're people with life experience that come from different areas of life, whether it be small business, whether it be from farming, people who can contribute to make those changes happen and make those changes actually really fundamental so that it's not about just policy talk, but implementation with real life aspect to it.
But you have had some issues with candidates. You've had 5 stand down, and some would say you're a party of 3 sort of recognised, and maybe now 2 more with Pamir and Hogard joining the ranks. Do you have the depth to say have 16, 17 MPs in Parliament?
I believe we do. I think that we also need to have a look at candidates. When they put their hand up, they're putting their hand up because they're not happy with the direction that a country's going in, and they want to be part of the change. And one of the things that I see as well is people say they want members of Parliament that have real life experience. Well, in order to have that, it means you've got to make mistakes along the way within your life. And if we have a media who continue to barrage potential candidates based on something they may have said 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, we're going to struggle to present candidates in the future, especially those that have lived their lives on social media. In order to have real life experience, we need to have made mistakes. We need to have been able to learn from them. Candidates that ACT have put up have good values, have good morals, and while some may have made mistakes in the past, those that have made, quite big mistakes, they've decided to leave the party in order to advance the interests of the party for New Zealanders. So it's unfortunate that we've lost some, but at least we haven't lost members of Parliament, so to speak. We've lost potential candidates. But at this stage, I think the bigger issue here is actually whether or not we're going to have a media who just conducts himself based on a person's past instead of looking at the values that they want to represent going forward.
But the media was treated quite badly at your launch yesterday. I mean, there were some incidences, and even David Seymour called some party members out on that. Why do you think that happened?
Well, I think, again, it's a bit of frustration, but also my understanding of what happened, we actually couldn't see ourselves because we were backstage, so we could hear, but we couldn't see what was going on. So what I've been told is that when the protester stood up in the middle of David's speech, he was in the middle of a line, and some of the people that were in that line, in that row of seats, were trying to get out while a cameraman was trying to force his way in. Apparently he was hit, but apparently he was hit by a little old lady. And David did speak to him afterwards, and he said he was absolutely fine. So again, I think it's a bit of media spin on that particular incident instead of actually looking at the bigger picture of the campaign. And I say it was a success because I could hear all the cheers that were occurring when David delivered his speech on key components of that speech. We had people there that were in full agreement with the direction that we want to take the country in, and that's to be able to alleviate the fears and concerns that people have, and they liked what they were hearing. That is a success for ACT.
Yeah. Well, he was speaking to the converted, but anyway, now youth crime and ran raids have risen in Hawke's Bay as in other parts of the country. You, the Justice spokesman, what is your solution for this?
We have a myriad of different crime policies where we want to introduce different policies that will not only combat the youth crime that we're seeing, but also some of the serious violent crime that we are seeing being committed by adults as well. We need to attack this from a whole lot of different areas. And maybe this is a better way of me being able to explain it. When I was growing up, my mother taught me that there was a line in the sand, and when you crossed it, there was consequence to it. We're seeing youth now that have no line. They don't see a consequence when they misbehave. They see it almost as an opportunity to carry on. So we'd like to reintroduce that line, and we can do that in several ways. If we have a 12-year-old that is ram raiding, that's a serious violent offence. We will make sure that there is a consequence to them. And we'll start off by putting ankle bracelets on them so that we track where they are going. These kids should be in at school, not out there stealing cars and ram raiding. So let's track them, make sure that they do go to school. Those that commit those serious violent offences also need to be corrected. They're not getting corrected in the oranga tamariki system. We want to ensure that they go to the corrections facilities, and we would introduce another 200 beds under corrections where they do get corrected and rehabilitated for what they're doing. But also, these kids don't start off as ram raiders. they generally start off as shoplifters doing petty crime. So let's try and nip it in the bud right there and then. And that means having instant penalties for kids that are caught shoplifting or doing other little petty crime. Get caught shoplifting, then you may have to scrub the walls or all the tagging off the shop itself or that next door. An instant penalty so that the kids know there is a line that has been crossed. And then further to that, we've got to look at education opportunities for these kids because they're not going to school. We've been told that in Northland, for example, only 24% of kids are going to school. So we've got to change the education structure as well to ensure that kids are going to school, are learning, and if they can't learn in that environment, open up charter schools for them again so that they can learn trades and skills that will benefit them in the future. Give them a future, give them hope, and give them opportunities.
Now, this sort of no-tolerance approach, some people say it hasn't really worked in the past. Why do you think it will work this time?
Because what we have right now is not working.
Yeah.
What we have right now has actually failed our children, our communities, and many families. So we have to go not so much backwards, because it's not just about the stick, it's about the carrot as well. That's why we're saying, hey, let's look at education, let's look at charter schools, but we have to have that consequence as well, because without consequence, these kids are running amok, and that's got to stop.
Now, in the aftermath of Cyclone Gabriel, affected communities said they saw a spike in crime and there's still some frustration. You say you've been down here before, and that what are you hearing from people on the ground in terms of how the government has handled the approach to crime?
Well, they feel like they've been ignored. I was at an Esk Valley meeting where a woman stood up and she spoke about the crime that was happening directly in Esk Valley. And the Minister of Police at the time, Stuart Nash, actually denied to her in front of the public meeting that that was happening. She questioned whether or not the man that was shining the torch through her children's bedroom window in the Esk Valley 3 or 4 times a night that she has to chase off was a figment of her imagination. When we have members of Parliament sitting in Parliament in these situations, they need to listen to their communities. Then they need to act on what they hear and not deny the community the experiences that they have been operating or having. Act are very much looking at what we can do for the victims of crime rather than what we do for criminals themselves. The victims of crime have been left out. They're not even really considered, and it's not fair on them. And many of them get re-victimised because of it. In Esk Valley, in the Hawke's Bay region, the East Cape region, we've got people who have suffered enough just through the losses of the cyclone, losses of life, loss of property, and then we've got a government that are ignoring their concerns about crime. That's not good enough. We need to have change there. That's why ACT have implemented policies on making sure that there will be consequence to criminals, including 500 prison beds for those that commit those serious crimes, bringing back 3 strikes, introducing 3 strikes for burglary as well. These are really important policies that we hope will put some confidence back into our communities that they can go about their lives feeling safe and secure once again.
Well, we'll get on to prison soon, but just in terms of Hawke's Bay is known to have quite a large gang population, yeah? And what is your solution to solving the gang issue, especially in Hawke's Bay?
We've had gangs in New Zealand for about 70 years now, 1950s that they were introduced. You hear a lot of political parties talk about, let's ban the gang patches, or, at the end of the day, we actually need to have a look at what it is that makes these people think it's a better idea to go and join a gang and commit violent crime than to actually be a contributing member of society. So again, consequence is needed for crime that is committed. That's an absolute must. But we also have to look at it. What is it that they're missing? And again, I think it comes down to education and opportunities, support wraparound. I'm not saying we go and cuddle the gangs. I actually have no tolerance whatsoever for that type of mentality. But it's no use to just go and lock them up. We actually need to look at what changes we can make to help them in their lives to make them better people. And this could be looking at the whole family concept, but also I think making or drawing that line in the sand again is going to make a big difference between someone wanting to join a gang and someone wanting to just go and get a proper job.
Is banning patches in public an option?
I don't think so. I haven't seen it work anywhere. I think it's a bit of a throwaway statement. And as we've seen, of course, over in Australia, the gangs then just tattoo patches on themselves. I also wonder whether or not it actually brings in a bigger issue, which is, people marking themselves with some sort of insignia. I mean, what does that mean for the local bowling club who wears their jackets? It really isn't going to make much difference, and it's not getting to the underlying issues that we have with gangs and the violence that is created. Drugs, of course, importation of drugs, use of drugs, it is ruining our communities, whether you're in a gang or not. But the gangs are the ones that appear to be selling most of these drugs. So let's try and knock that out so that we can support the bigger version of a great community, not just where the gangs are.
Because you mentioned, some gangs are quite ingrained in our society, and in Hawke's Bay, many families have a gang member in their family.
Yes.
So how do you sort of, because a lot of people just feel, well, they're family members and they're doing what they're doing. How do you get through that sort of inbuilt generational sort of system?
Yes. What's been encouraging for me is meeting some people who have come out the other side of gangs, of meeting for example, I didn't meet this fella, but a young guy, I won't say what town he was in, whose father is the president of a gang. This young lad went off into farming, and his father went and visited him on the farm and said to him, do not come back to the city. This is your life. You can do something here. I think a big part of the changes that we need to make is those leaders within the gangs recognising that there are better opportunities for their kids. When we get lazy as a society is when we just start saying, let's do the same thing over and over again. And that becomes quite hard to break the cycle. And I think this is why we're seeing 70 years of gang membership within New Zealand itself. It becomes quite hard. Whoever implements change in whichever government, it needs to be continued on instead of being changed depending on who the government of the day is, because I think that's where we also get a breakdown. It's got to be a community response led by the government that continues on well after that government may have left and a new one takes over.
Now, ACT is calling for more prison beds, and obviously prison has been the main option because you feel that Labour has reduced the prison population. So should Hawke's Bay voters be worried that we're going to suddenly have even bigger prison than we do at the moment?
We want to introduce 500 prison beds. It doesn't mean it's all going to go into one area or into one prison. We need to be able to be sustainable if we are going to create that line in the sand. I ask our communities, are you going to be more frightened of more prisoners in a prison, or are you going to be more frightened of violent criminals being out in the community? And I think that's what they need to weigh up. The difference with ACT is that we want to offer corrections rehabilitation, meaning people cannot get out on parole unless they rehabilitate. That also means opening up the rehabilitation services so that those that have specific needs can have those needs addressed. We have some people sitting in prison at the moment who don't know how to read and write, others who have no driver licence, for example. So if we can get in there and say, well, hey, we're going to teach you how to read and write, that could be the difference between getting a job or not. Getting a driver licence could mean the difference between getting a job or not. If we can give people an opportunity to better themselves in prison, then we're actually doing justice to the name of corrections instead of, just putting people in there to not learn, to become a part of a university of crime instead of being part of a university of life skills.
Yeah. Now, after the Christchurch massacre and that there were tight, gun laws were tight, and you have a background in firearms and you're a firearms spokesperson as well for the party. Do you think licensed gun holders are being discriminated against, and do you think they should be allowed to have semi-automatic weapons and that?
I think they are most definitely being targeted, and I think wrongfully targeted as well. after the horrific events of March 15, 2019, the Labor government put through 2 pieces of urgent legislation. They did so without communicating not only with the licensed community, the law-abiding community, but without waiting for the Royal Commission inquiry to find out what it is that went wrong. When that came out, it actually showed that it was the process of licensing that went wrong. The terrorist, Brenton Tarrant, was not a Kiwi. He came over from Australia, yet it's all the 250,000 licensed owners that are Kiwis that have been blamed and targeted for that.
But he still got it legally and he still went through the process.
But his process was incorrect. So the process that he went through was not the same process that licensed firearm owners in New Zealand usually go through. And that definitely needs to be tightened up. My whole reason for coming into politics was based upon those legislative changes. I had a business as a firearms safety instructor and actually contracted to New Zealand Police to deliver firearms safety. And I could see in 2019 and 2020 that those changes were not going to keep New Zealand safe. In fact, it had the potential to make gun crime worse and make us as a country worse with gun crime. And that's exactly what's happened. Gangs now, between December 2022 and May 2023, gang members commit 2.8 firearm offences every single day. Not one of them is licensed. And all the effect of the legislative changes that we've had has actually come on those that are licensed that are not committing the crime. Police in their response have said, well, it's licensed firearm owners that have given gangs their guns. Well, I dispute that. And I asked the New Zealand Police through a written parliamentary question, how many straw buyers are there and how many guns have gone sideways from legitimate owners? And they told me they don't keep that information. They've said we need to have a gun registry in order to keep New Zealanders safe. I believe it's not even an ambulance at the bottom of the hill. So we asked New Zealand Police, over the last 12 months, how many firearms have you seized from non-licensed people? And to the 1st of July 2023, the figure's 1,213. That's a lot of firearms from unlicensed people. So we asked how many were registered, well, not registered, sorry, how many had serial numbers on them? And there's only 394. So we, at the moment, have put $340 million into a system that includes a registry, and yet we've got only 32.5% of firearms that have been seized actually having a serial number on them. We could actually put that money into the gangs or targeting the illegal use, and those 1,213 firearms, actually there's a lot more out there. And police have estimated 180 to 200,000 are out there in illegal ownership. That's where we should be putting our money, and that's where we should be targeting firearm or illicit firearm crime.
But some might say that the more, if you allow these semi-automatic weapons out there, and the more guns you allow out there, it stands to reason the more crime and the more incidents you're going to have.
Not if you have legitimate reason for having them, and
What
you
is
have
a legitimate reason? I mean, I don't need a semi-automatic weapon.
Duck shooters use semi-automatics in the Mai when they're shooting through duck shooting season. Pest controllers use semi-automatics for the humane dispatch of multiple animals. A lot of people have said, if you can't shoot an animal with one shot, why do you need to have is that why you've got a semi-automatic? Because you can't do it. No, it's not about that. It's about the difference between having a herd of 15 goat and being able to take them all out, or only take out 5 with a bolt action. We have so many pests in New Zealand, and they are getting well and truly out of control since the bans came in. There is legitimate reason for having semi-automatics and high-capacity magazines. And what we had was a system before March 15 where those that had high-capacity magazines with their MSSAs, that they were called at the time, were in a registered system. 15,000 of them. And when the confiscation occurred, or the buyback as it's called, all of those firearms were accounted for, every single one of them. But what the issue was we had A category or standard license semi-automatics, and the ability for those people to buy high capacity magazines. Now, I've been part of a group that since 2012 had been asking police and the government to ensure that high-capacity magazines could only be purchased with somebody with an endorsed licence. And we were told, too late, the horse has bolted, it's already gone. And so what ended up happening was we had A category firearms that had large capacity magazines introduced to them, creating what should have been a firearm put into endorsement. Anyone and any firearm is capable of causing harm if it's used inappropriately. And we at ACT believe it's important that we put the emphasis on fit and proper use and ownership, not on the firearm, but actually on the person. Because whether it's a .22, a shotgun, or a centerfire cartridge, they all have that capacity to cause harm if used inappropriately. But all of them have their use, and legitimately so. So we should not confine those that have that legitimate reason from not being able to use them based on what somebody else did. Actually, let's look at the person and make sure that they are fit and proper to have the legitimate use and ownership of those guns.
Now, why can people of Hawke's Bay feel safer under ACT coalition government?
Because we're going to go harder on crime. It's as simple as that.
But you're going to let people have more guns?
We're going to let fit and proper people not have more guns, but have the firearms that they want to use under an enhanced licence. And an enhanced licence means that there would be stricter security, there would be more checks on the individual, including more referees. If required by the vetter, there would be mental health checks on them as well, and there could be restrictions placed on them. There would need to be, as I mentioned before, legitimate use. This is more than we've ever had within our licensing regime, an absolute emphasis on that person, not on the firearm, but on the person. A firearm can't get up on its own and shoot someone. It's actually got to come down to who is in charge of it. Now, the crime that we're seeing at the moment is not being committed by these people, but these people are the ones that are being targeted by New Zealand Police and the government. We actually need to put the emphasis back on the criminals, go after them, take away their acquisition of firearms and have consequence for it. Now, I had a bill that was drawn out of the ballot box about 18 months ago, and it would have allowed police to be able to seize and freeze criminal assets upon finding an illegally held firearm in possession of a place where they did a raid on an organised criminal group. And Labor rejected it. They said no. Right there was, we believe, the ability for Labor to have been able to actually hammer down on the gangs and say, you're found with a firearm, we will seize your assets. We will introduce this as a disincentive for the gangs and criminals to be in possession of firearms. You're found with an illegally held gun, then you are going to lose your assets.
Now, last question, just in terms of ACT policy, it's across the board, welfare, whatever it comes, seems to be your message is tough love and giving people sort of to take responsibility of their own life. Some might say this isn't the New Zealand way and this is maybe a bit mean. What would you say to that?
I disagree. I think it is the New Zealand way. We like to be thinking outside the box here in New Zealand. We've always been about personal responsibility. I grew up in a country where we didn't have that much government interference in our life. We're now being dictated to over absolutely everything. I used to be told by my mum that government should stop at your front gate. But this government's coming through the gate, coming through the front door, gone into my kitchen, cooked a big feed, made a mess before I kicked them out the back door. We need to actually kick them right down the street. Get New Zealanders back to being individuals, having personal responsibility, because that's where we thrive. You know, we can get the opportunities and we want to make something of our lives. We're losing that here and we're losing hope. ACT believes we can bring back hope, we can bring back confidence, and we can do it together, unifying as one country, not separating ourselves out between Māori and Pākehā, but being one and giving our country hope again.
Nicole McKee, thank you so much for your time and good luck for the elections.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.